So we're going to go through and we're going to show you guys how you can file a TEAS standard application for your company on a logo, so not just a word mark. And we're going to do the standard application. And as I've explained in prior videos, the TEAS Plus is fine maybe in some limited circumstances, but it's quite limiting because it forces you to use only a canned set of options for the description of goods and services. So today we're going to go through and you do the standard. We're going to have the full latitude to enter in whatever text that we want to describe our goods and services. This is the direct site that you can go to if you want to go directly to the filing page. Alternatively, what you can do is especially if you forget, you can just go to Google and do a search. So let me pull up my window. Let me go to Google. We'll start there. And if I type in USPTO, trademark, and forms, it should be the very first. Oh no, filing. Sorry, USPTO, trademark, and file. That's the Google search. Okay, it's the very, very first hit. Okay, so once you are here, you're going to want to click on Initial Application Forms, and then you're going to want to click on Start Your Application in TEAS. So once we're in here, one thing I want to stress is that you have to have a USPTO.gov account, and it's pretty easy to set up. But if I didn't have a USPTO.gov account, then when I clicked on that Start Your Application in TEAS, it would have taken me into a login page. So just be aware of that. You have to actually be logged in order to access the TEAS, the filing system. So I logged in before the show, which is why it took me directly here. I suggest you enable two-factor authentication. But once you get here, this is where the real application process begins. So again, we're going to do TEAS Standard today. Yesterday we did the TEAS Plus. Again, TEAS Standard is $50 more, but as you're going to see in this video, in the show, we're going to show you how, by doing the TEAS Standard, you're going to have full latitude to describe your goods and services. So we're going to do this from the perspective of an individual that actually is filing on behalf of their own company. So we're going to click No. It's going to be done by the individual. We're going to click Continue. And now we're going to get into the meat of the application. So the first part of the application is identifying who the owner is. And I want to stress the owner of a trademark is the entity that controls the nature and quality of the goods that are being provided. So in this case, we're gonna do it in the name of our corporation. So we're gonna type in our name, and then we're gonna have to select the entity type. Now, when you select the entity type, it's going to ask you to identify the state that it's incorporated in. So in this case, we're a California corporation. So we select California, and then we're gonna have to input our address. So let's put in our address, and then city and state information and our email address. Now, email address is actually required. Phone number is not required, fax number is not required, and website address is not required. So just keep that in mind. If you want to limit the amount of information of your personal or company information that is available online, you might want to omit your phone number. I recommend that more for individual applications. If you have a corporation, you probably already are public or consumer facing, and so it doesn't matter as much, but just keep that in mind. Now, the system is going to give me a warning when I try to proceed without entering a phone number. You can disregard it. If the examiner needs to contact you, they'll probably most likely anyways contact you over email. So this isn't as big a deal. Now here, this is the part where we're gonna upload our logo. So one thing I want to stress on the logo, it's really important that your logo meet these requirements. So one is that you don't want it to be larger than 944 pixels in any dimension, or smaller than 250 pixels in any dimension. So what I recommend doing is I recommend taking your logo and making it 944 in the longest dimension. So if it's a lengthwise logo, I would make it 944 in length. And if it's a height-wise logo, I would make it 944 in height. Now, the reason why you want that large image is so that you have a nice crisp image for the principal register. So that's my general recommendation. I don't like to submit grainy logos if possible. Now, I also suggest that you submit black and white logos. Why is that? Unless you're claiming color as a feature of the mark, you want to just have a generic black and white or grayscale. That way you're not limited to color, okay? And then also it needs to be a JPEG. or PDF. You cannot upload a PNG. A couple shows ago, I accidentally uploaded a PNG, so I make that mistake too sometimes, but just keep that in mind. So these are the requirements for the logo. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna click Choose File. And I obviously already prepped the logo before the show, but here's the logo, and we're gonna click Attach. And then one thing I'll do is I'll show you guys the actual product that we're gonna be trademarking. So this is the product here. It's sold by the company. And again, it has, if you look at this image, let me open image in new tab. And you can see very clearly, here's the logo on the upper right. Now, one thing to note is that you don't necessarily need to submit an add to cart or a logo next to the add to cart button. I did that in prior episodes. If the logo actually is attached to the item of goods, then that should be sufficient. So a photograph should be sufficient for a specimen. We'll get to the specimen in a little bit. The first thing we have to do is we have to make sure that we upload the logo correctly. So we are here now, and we hit attach already, so the logo is uploaded. Now, you have to indicate any literal elements that are in the design. So in this case, it'd be adibiip group, and then protecting innovators. And the color, again, so we're not claiming color as a feature of the mark, but if your color was in fact distinctive, if your color did in fact serve as a source identifier, then consider also checking this box and actually explaining what the color is. Now, the mark consists of, so this requires you to describe the mark itself. So here we can say the large stylized text, Adibi IP group, having a molecular design above and smaller stylized text protecting innovators below. The period is going to be added automatically to the end. Then we click continue. And now we're going to get to the part where we actually get to, you can disregard. The system will give you a lot of warnings. Most of them generally you can disregard, but you should read the warnings. Now here we're going to actually have the opportunity to enter freeform text. One thing I wanted to stress is yesterday when we did this show, we did a TEAS Plus application. So it was $50 less, but we were stuck with the canned descriptions of goods and services. In today's show, we're doing freeform text. So we get to describe the goods in our own words. So we're going to do class 25 today. Again, it's clothing and apparel, it's headwear. Now, if it has medical purpose, you're going to be in a class 10, or if it's protective, like it's one of those protective respirator masks, that's going to be in class 9. So just be aware of that. Now, in this case, we're going to enter in clothing and apparel, namely face masks. So nice and broad. As you guys know, if you guys watched yesterday's episode, the CAN system TS Plus actually requires you to call them knit face masks, I believe. So just keep that in mind. Now, once we have the description of goods entered, we're going to select section 1A. Now, remember, there's two types of general applications. Well, aside from the TS Plus and TS Standard, within those, there's two types of applications. There's intent to use applications under section 1B and actual use applications under section 1A. So just keep that in mind. We've been doing a series of episodes presently on section 1A applications, which means that we're already selling the goods on the marketplace. So for example, as I showed you here, these are readily available. You can actually purchase these, add to cart, and proceed to purchase, checkout, right? So this would be an actual use application. Now, intent to use is really good if you are thinking about using a logo to sell your clothing brand, but you want to be sure that you can actually secure the mark before you invest in all the branding and all your social, all the paper that you might generate, stickers, all that. Before you do all that, before you spend all that money, you might want to actually be sure that you can secure the mark. So that is what the intent to use application is good for. We're doing section 1A applications here. So we're going to have to indicate the date that we first started selling with the mark and the first time that we started using the mark anywhere. So the first thing that we have to do is attach the specimen. Again, for the specimen in this case, all I did was I just PDF'd this image here. So it's going to be just a photograph of the goods bearing the mark. So we're going to choose the file. Let me choose it here. Again, I prepped this before the show. So give me 1 second. Here's the specimen. Okay, and actually in this case, I didn't PDF it. I just I just did a JPEG, that should not be an issue. Again, the TEAS system does not accept PNGs, JPEGs, or PDFs. Once it's attached, you're going to see this blue link here. If you were to click it, it would take you to another page. It would actually show you what it is that you've uploaded. Now, we're going to click return to form. Now, remember, make sure that you see it and make sure you get this confirmation that it's been uploaded. If it hasn't been uploaded and you return to form, then you're going to see there's 0 attachments. Here we have 1 file attached, so we know we're good. We know we uploaded it. So now we have to describe what the specimen is. In this case, it's a photograph showing the identified goods bearing the applied for mark. Date of first use anywhere. I'm going to go with the date we formed the corp, and then the date of first use of commerce. I think I've just been using 4/15/2020. Now, one thing I'll remind you, it's really you want to make sure you get this right. You want to make sure that you use the date that you first used the mark in commerce. Now, what does in commerce mean? Generally, the safest interpretation of in commerce, the safest interpretation is the first date of a sale to an out-of-state resident. So if you're in California, if your business is in California, the first date that you sold to someone in Oregon, Colorado, Nevada, anywhere outside of the state, because that will invoke interstate commerce. So just keep that in mind. If you're being conservative and you want to be safe and be sure that your mark can survive any sort of dispute in the future, it's really important that you understand that use in commerce must involve an out-of-state sale. Now, that's obviously an area that's debatable, and there might be some practitioners that might take a more conservative or a more liberal position on that. But just generally, if you want to be safe, you should show a few sales out of state. Now, it's really important. Make sure you keep those records. Make sure you keep those receipts, because if you litigate this 10 years down the line, you might not have ready access to those records. So it's nice to have that proof. So keep that in mind. Now, one thing that I really like about Big Cartel, which I don't know what you guys are using to sell your goods, but obviously services like this, they keep track of all your customers and where the order was placed from. So, but again, it's nice if you don't have a system like that. Just keep track of it. It'll be worthwhile. It's easy to have. And actually, I like to ask my clients to send me their records for when they had that first sale, just for purposes of our record keeping. So we're going to click assigned filing basis. Once we do that, we're going to see that the assigned filing basis 1A has been assigned under class 25 for this description of goods. Now we're going to click continue. Now we're almost done with the application. Now it's just a matter of entering in our correspondence information. So I'm going to enter in a docket number. What I want to stress is that the docket number is really more important if you have a slew of cases. So if you have a lot of trademarks, it's going to be less important if you've only done 1 or 2 or only plan to do 1 or 2. We have hundreds, so because we represent a lot of different entities, and so we need to use docket numbers in order to keep track of anything. So I always recommend adding whoever you work with, your assistant, your coworker, your colleague, your business partner, whoever it is that is also somehow involved tangentially with the mark or procuring the mark. You're going to want to add their email addresses here. Now, what I recommend doing is I recommend adding more rather than less, right? So in this case, I'm just going to add Victoria, but you can add up to 4 email addresses. So Victoria is going to get all the correspondence related to this application. So she's going to get the filing receipt, and she's going to get any correspondence from the trademark office as the trademark is examined and goes through the proceedings. So we're going to click continue. And this is the area where we do what's called validate the application. So in this area, we actually are going to enter in our signature, swearing to declaring these 4 items. So the first item is that we understand that we're filing a Section 1A application, which means that we're already using the mark in commerce to sell goods. The second checkbox is us saying that to our knowledge, there's no one else who has a right to use this mark before us. And this third checkbox is saying that everything in the application has factual support. So for example, this website, for example. And then the fourth item is just saying that we're swearing on the penalty of perjury. In other words, any false statements that we make in this application could result in penalty or imprisonment. So the next thing we have to do is actually sign it. Now the system makes it really easy for you to sign these applications. All you have to do is enter your name within slashes. So really easy. They make it really convenient. They autofill the date for you. And then for the name, all you do is just enter your last name, comma, first name, and then your position. So in this case, I'm the president of the corp. And then you're going to want to enter in your your phone number. Now, once we do this, we're basically done. We click validate, and now we're going to be taken to the very last page. Now, in this last page, what we have the opportunity of doing is actually reviewing the entire application and making sure that it's correct and that it's ready to file. So the first thing you're going to want to do is click on input. Input will actually show you the application. So in this case, shows us the logo. It's a special form mark, otherwise known as a design mark. This is the literal text that appears on the mark. This is the description of the mark. This is the size. Notice here, 944. Remember that? The 944. You want to get it right. I like to get it right up to the edge because I like to have a high quality image for the principal register. This information here is all our correspondence information for the entity. This is the corporation type, so it's a California Corp. This is the class of goods. And this is a description. Again, remember, we did a TEAS standard application. So the only difference between TEAS Plus and the TEAS standard is this section right here, where we actually get to describe the goods in our own words. So just keep that in mind. Now here we have the date of first use anywhere. Here's the first date of use in commerce. Section 1A, again, I explained that thoroughly. And this is a description of the specimen. So a photograph showing identified goods bearing the applied for mark. Now remember, if there's any issue with the description of the specimen, what will happen is the examiner will require you to amend it. And sometimes in our experience, they actually give you suggestions for how you can go about amending the description so that it's amenable to them and ready for publication. The same thing is going to go with the identification of goods. Sometimes it's indefinite. Like, for example, one common mistake is using the word including. So clothing and apparel, including. That would invoke an indefiniteness refusal, and the examiner would actually require you to reword that, more than likely. Now, the correspondence information, again, these are the emails, addresses, these that are going to get all correspondence, including the filing receipt for this application. So just keep that in mind. Now remember, it's a TEAS standard, so it's 275 instead of the 225. And this very last section right here, this section is the actual validation signature. So this is my signature validating all the items that I just discussed before. Now, let's just say that in this review process that you identify, hey, oh, I made a mistake. Not a problem. You can fix it. All you have to do is click go back to modify. The TEAS Plus and the TEAS standard, all the TEAS system applications are really nice because they let you go back and they store all your information. So they create a session, and in that session, all your data is stored. So it's really, really easy to go back, make modifications, add items, and then go back forward. You don't lose anything. So in this case, the application was fine, so we don't need to go back and make any changes. But if you did have to, again, really easy. Let's just look at the mark before we submit, make sure it looks good. So it looks good to me, nice high quality res. One thing that I want to stress, you cannot change the mark after you file. So it's really, really important that you get the mark correct, okay? If this is not in fact the logo, if Victoria looks at it and says, hey, actually I like the molecule more to the left, we would have to do a whole new application and pay a whole new $275. No refunds, no opportunity to change the design. So just keep that in mind. And then specimen, this is going to present you with a link. Let me see if I can show you guys what this link is showing. So this is the actual, yeah, it doesn't allow me to. But if you were to click on this, it will pop up a dialog, and that dialog you could then, let me see if I can show you guys actually. Here we go. Okay, so this is the actual image that we uploaded to the TEAS application. This is what we're going to submit as the specimen. And again, shows the logo up top, stitched, affixed to the goods. So great. So application is ready to go. There's one last checkbox that we have to mark, and that is this checkbox here. And again, this checkbox is just saying there are no refunds. If you mess up your mark, you're going to have to resubmit. So it also reminds you that everything that you submit is going to be public. So this is all public record. So that's why I was saying be careful if you have a private phone number that you don't want the public to know about. Do not submit it, right? Keep that private. So great. So this application is good to go. Once we click submit, we're going to be taken to a payment page, and that is it. So the payment page, upload your credit card, Visa, however you're going to pay. Really, really simple. They're going to show you the docket number at the very top. It's just loading. Just loading. Sometimes it's laggy. Okay, here we go. And it's loaded. Okay, so here it is. Here's the docket number. And when you click credit card, you can enter your credit card in here. And once you click pay submit payment, your trademark application will be submitted and you will get what's called a filing receipt. Now, that filing receipt is going to be stuck with your application throughout the entire process. So throughout the entire application process, the filing receipt is going to be used to identify your application. And even after your trademark issues into a registered mark, you can still use that serial number to track the status of that post-registered trademark. So just keep that in mind.